This time, Unknown Not the Mind Probe, episode number 96, The Doctor and the Beanstalk.
Welcome to No, Not the Mind Probe. That was in, what was I going for there? Sort of fairy tale-y?
Foppish,
Glinda
British
the
fairy
Good Witch
tale,
almost?
yes.
No, not the Mind Probe, Dorothy.
Oh, yeah, a little bit of that.
We were just talking about in the last episode.
Hints of that, a hint of that.
A little essence of Glinda. Glinda? The Good
Glinda,
Witch.
Good Witch.
You know what? All right, folks. You're going to hear it here live. This is a confession. As a gay person, I have never seen Wicked. Yeah.
Oh, I think you're going to say you've never seen Wizard of Oz.
Oh, no, I mean that. Yeah. Haven't you heard my classic Wizard of Oz stories? My classic anecdote about Wizard of Oz?
No.
That when I was a kid, so folks, Wizard of Oz is a movie. And it's a very classic movie. 1930
something, right?
30s. Yeah, it was 30. It was very old. And it used to be on back before even VCRs. It used to be on every year. I think it was a CBS. Used to play it every year, maybe around Thanksgiving, I feel like, or something on TV. And you would, and so
1939.
1939. So it'd be on TV. I know this is the only way to watch it. And so every year we sit down and watch it. Well, when I was very little, I think I wasn't allowed to stay up that late. And the movie's 2 hours long, or once on broadcast TV, it's 2 hours long. And I think my parents wanted me to go to bed at 9. And so for several years, they would end the movie when they get to the Emerald City, when they see it across, they get through the field of poppies,
They were like,
and they
that's
see
the
the
end.
They're like, they made it to the Emerald City, the movie's over. And I'd be like, but she doesn't go back. I don't understand. And so yes, for many years, I thought the movie ended when they
You thought the movie was like good but flawed.
Yeah, it feels like it didn't complete her character arc. So if I had been doing a podcast on that, it would have come up very short. But fortunately, that's not what this is. It's a podcast. This is a podcast where we watch and rank the first 300 Doctor Who stories, and I am allowed to stay up and watch all of them.
Well, that's good.
Beauty. My name is John Grant, and I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 39 fantastic years.
My name is Porter Mason. John asked me to watch Doctor Who for 27 years. A few years ago, in the midst of a global pandemic, I said yes.
Yep.
This episode, we look at two stories. We're going through the 2005 Doctor Who series in order. We're in the Peter Capaldi years right now. And then John, our Doctor Who sommelier, matches one of those newer Whoer stories with one of the classic stories. And right now, we're also talking about the hot off the presses, out of the oven, Chudigatwa Doctor Who stories that are happening as we speak. This week, we're going to talk about the 2023 Christmas episode.
That's right.
But what do we have in store for the 2005 and the classic Who?
All right. Well, we go into the garden. Get out your hose and your rakes and your watering cans and your pesticide, your DDT.
I don't like how you said hose. I don't like that.
Oh,
there was a tone there. There was something there to that.
Hoeing,
yeah.
Hoeing. Well, get doing your hoeing. That's
no. I don't think.
When I was a kid, my parents said, "Get out there and do some hoeing." It was confusing for many years. But we're growing things, trees, plants, and they're growing. They're growing on their own. You don't need your help.
Growing and learning.
In our stories here, we have the penultimate to the finale of the season of the Peter Capaldi first year of Peter Capaldi here, and Clara. They're rejoining Danny Pink in contemporary London with a little green twist to it, I'd say. In the forest of the night, and we have paired that with another out of control plant story. Although this time the plants are a little making a little bit of trouble, not like in the forest of the night. We've got the fourth Dr. Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen and Sarah Jane Smith in the Seeds of Doom.
But first, we were going to talk on what was it?
The Church on Ruby Road.
The Church on Ruby Road, which was the Christmas special this year. This was the first sort of standalone. Chudigatwa was the Doctor. David Tennant. For the first time in 20 years, David Tennant was not in this episode of Doctor Who. It was Chudigawa, and we
Actually,
get
he recorded the entire episode, and then they just digitally put Shudigawa's head on him, so
yeah,
he's still there.
and we got the introduction of who's going to be the first companion for
Yes,
Chudigawa,
and her name is
and
Ruby Sunday, even though I repeatedly refer to her as Ruby Tuesday. In
also
my head, I have to stop myself every time.
there's also an Offspring song. I think it's Offspring. I really like, called Ruby Soho, and
Oh man,
yeah, there's Ruby Tuesday. There's Anyway, she's bound to fail because we can't say her name right.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
and we get it. So full Chudigawa story. We really get a sense of him as the Doctor. I think. I think it continues on what we saw in the third special, but now you're really seeing him how he swoops in as the Doctor, and it's just I just have really enjoyed it. I mean, it really reminds me not because he's similar to Matt Smith, but it reminds me of those Matt Smith episodes where it's like, oh man, he has a whole idea for this and he
Yeah,
is
he's
doing
in.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed Ruby too.
And
She's
Millie
sort of
Gibson is the actress's name.
yeah, and I'd looked her up like a bit before, and I was a little worried just because it seems like her as a young celebrity is just like a little brash
Yeah,
and things like that. But she plays such a sweet character on here that was really endearing to me. And what I liked, again, coming off of I'm in the midst of the Clara episodes right now, I felt we immediately have like a take into her story. We know how she's grown up. We know a
yeah.
lot about her. We don't know. There's some interesting things we don't know
We have
about
a
her.
mystery. There's a mystery. Yeah, of
There's a
course.
mystery to it, but we know who she is. And and then kind of a big effect spectacular too with all the goblins. Or were they goblins at
Creepy
some?
goblins.
Yeah,
Yeah, little goblins.
they were cool.
Yeah, it was a good. I liked it too. I think it's interesting, especially since you've got Shooty appearing like the last 10, 15 minutes of the giggle before, and then you
Yes.
kind of skip. You got the regenerate, and then you kind of skip to he's just normally the first episode they're going through the post regeneration kind of
Right.
troubles and stuff like that. You skipped all that. He's just fully formed at this point, and incredibly confident. It's a great performance from him. I thought the episode was, a good first story because it's not the plot. Who cares? I mean, it's goblins eating babies for some
I
reason.
mean, it's fascinating that
yeah,
Chudy is treating or the I should say the 14th Doctor. Well, wait. So what is he now? The 15th Doctor?
he's the 15th. Yeah.
So the 15th Doctor is just sort of treating us like, oh yeah, goblins are constantly in the clouds doing this stuff. So I love when Doctor Who does that. Of there's like, oh yes, this is something that's constantly been going on. We've never mentioned it in 70 years, but yes, this is always happening.
One is they feed on coincidence. So the line is supposedly that Star Trek's going to become more fantasy than sci-fi now. Although they still try. I don't know if I buy that's going to be a huge change. It feels like it's going to. But yeah, he's got some very funny lines. I'm learning the vocabulary of rope. At one point, he yells at her.
That was cool. I like
the whole
that
thing, and then the spontaneously the breaking into song. I mean, you have a musical number that's new in Doctor Who. The Doctor and the companion join in as a distraction, right? To sing, sing to try to distract it, which I thought was really good. And and I think you also there was a neat. I liked there's a scene early on which apparently Disney asked for, where he goes to a Disney store and enjoys Disney products. No. Where he encounters the police. Remember, they're in the street and the snowman falls down. Is gonna, and he pops out of it or whatever. And the cop comes up to him and starts talking to him. And he says like, "Oh, she's gonna say yes to your proposal or whatever." And the guy's like, "What?" And he sort of deduces that this guy was going to ask his girlfriend,
like a Sherlock Holmes thing. He does,
yeah, a little bit of Sherlock Holmes thing, but a little. And the Eighth Doctor kind of did that, and he'd sort of be like, he talked to sort of predicting people's future, talking about that. So I thought that was a neat little callback, and seems like it could be an interesting part of his character. But yeah, I really liked him.
My biggest thing is I left it looking forward to seeing the next episode. I was like, oh, that was fun. I want to have that fun again. When is the next one? And as I said, John, prior to recording this podcast, when the teaser came up at the end for saying when the season was going to start, and then it said like coming in spring 2024, and I was like, oh man, we gotta wait like 2 years for this. And I was like, oh no, it is currently 2024.
It is now 2020.
So that was great. I wanted to read a note from superfan prober Paul.
Oh yeah, viewer correspondence.
This is he wrote in to the email guys that we always tell you to write into, Porter at myprobe.show, John at myprobe.show. Turns out John at MindProbe.show is not checking John at
No,
MindProbe.show.
that is, I don't remember
But
how to check it at this point.
But
But
Porter at
will.
MindProbe.show is checking it. So anyway, Paul wrote in and said, I'm slightly confused by that episode. We'll have to rewatch and work out what I make of it. It's not Doctor Who as I understood it. V3, Russell T Davies 2 has definitely got a more silly vibe, and I'm uncomfortable yet enjoying it. Suspect we need it currently. And I kind of get what he's saying. I don't know why it would be confusing or why it's not Doctor Who as I understood it. To me, and so I want to hear what you have to say about that, John. To me, what I responded to him, as I said, it was different to me. And again, I haven't watched the Jodie Whittaker years, but as I understand it, neither did Paul. He kind of went out on those.
People faded out.
But I felt it was different than the Who I've seen before, but in a really nice, like, breath of fresh air way. Like I really enjoyed it. I thought the singing was unusual, but fit into the plot and was just sort of, I didn't mind it. I thought it was, I don't know, I liked it. So to me, I thought it was really, I liked it. I thought it was fun. But what do you know what he means by it's not Doctor Who as I understood it?
I mean, yeah, I think it's a little less sci-fi-y. It's a little more, I guess, goblins in a flying wooden ship, I guess, is a little less like Sontarans,
Right.
in their space fleets or something like that.
I guess that's true.
And the idea of like that coincidence was somehow fueling them is sort of magic-y and things like that.
But we've had, going back to, was it Donna Years or Rose, where we had the beasts that feast on the rips in time. Like, to me, it reminded me of something like that. Like, there are these beings in the universe feeding on. I think
maybe I think, I mean, we've talked about this in past episodes of like, is Doctor Who fantasy or sci-fi and what's the difference and stuff like that. I feel like it will still always hang on sci-fi, but maybe less tightly, right? Like, there's like, hey, we're not going to spend as much time trying to justify this with some kind of pseudoscience. Just accept that it's going on.
You could, right? Chance, probability, bad luck. That's all wrapped up in the quantum realm. You could say they're, blah blah blah. You could do that. But I think it's maybe if they could get to a point where they can just kind of almost not even have to hand wave it and just say, like, just there's a science thing to this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and they're implying the implications of the toy maker, some lingering effects of the toy maker, and maybe that this has somehow shifted the universe in some way. Because the toy maker had sort of this absolute control over his universe, and as we saw in a couple of episodes. So maybe there's some lingering effects of that. We'll see how committed Russell T Davies ends up to this, right? I mean, sort of like, especially given how long he's been working in Doctor Who, like, it's not going to be, I don't think he's going to tear up the rule book and rewrite everything. We'll see what happens. But it was good.
Well, we will move on to our newer Who story, In the Forest of the Night. This is Series 8, Episode 10. It is Doctor Who story number 251, aired the 25th of October, 2014. This is the 12th Doctor and Clara, and as you mentioned, Danny Pink, and a cast of thousands of children.
More kids. If you loved the kids from the Cyberminister Nightmare in Silver, and you loved the Courtney coming along and Kill the Moon, well, here's 25 kids.
Oh, these kids are better than those kids. I think these kids are way better than those kids, but yes, if you don't love kids stamping around in here, then unfortunately, as it says on the TARDIS.fandom.com, a menagerie of child actors. I actually think they don't do too bad.
They did a pretty job, yeah.
But let's listen to a clip from In the Forest of the Night.
Well, this is the bad news. The good news is it's happened before, and you're still here. The Tunguska blast, 1908. That should have blown the whole planet off its axis, but it didn't. It knocked a few trees over. Well, a few tens of thousands of trees over. Curaçao in Brazil, same story. Earth should have been smashed, but it wasn't. What do these things have in common?
They're really, really scaring us.
Trees. Whenever there's a planet-threatening extraterrestrial impact, trees. Massive forest, filling the atmosphere with oxygen, pumping it up like a massive, highly inflammable airbag, so that when trouble hits...
everyone dies.
No! The impact burns off the excess oxygen. You have some fairly hectic weather for a few days and some fairly trippy-looking sunsets, but apart from that, you will be all right. I was wrong. The trees are not your enemy. They're your shield. They've been saving you since forever. Protecting you from everything that space can throw at you.
The wide ring. The red ring. In the museum, Ruby saw a cross-section of a tree. One of the rings was wider than the others and red.
Atmospheric dust captured by the trees. The fingerprint of an asteroid. Happy Red Ring Day.
I don't get it. If they're good, then why are we chopping them down?
The government is sending out defoliating teams. They're dropping chemicals on them right now.
What is it with you people?
All right. So what we have here is the students, I guess it's Danny's class.
Yeah.
Or he has like a group of kids he's taking here, but they're doing like a night at the museum thing. And when they wake up, when they go outside, the whole world is covered in greenery.
By the way, there's a little throwaway in here, but they have a nice little bit of I think it's an exchange with the doctor later on where they're like, oh yes, they're in the gifted and talented class of the special class. And then they're like, these kids aren't. And he's like, yeah, we just tell them that they need, it's basically the kids who need special attention, but they tell them they're gifted. Like,
yeah.
That's very clever.
And I should say Clara's with him. Clara's with the kids and him. On the TARDIS, one of the students is there with the doctor.
Mabe.
It's spelled Mabe, but they Mabe with a B, but it must be an Irish thing. They're clearly saying with a V, Mabe.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But at any rate, or Welsh maybe. At any rate,
now if it were Welsh, it would be. And
yes, I
Sorry,
did
Welsh people.
say it could be Welsh or Irish, thus sort of equating those two cultures. And look, right in. I'd love to hear
into
from
John
you.
at Mind.
I wasn't quite clear how Maeve got onto the TARDIS.
She was lost. She somehow escaped the museum and was lost, and then she just.
Yeah, but how'd she get in? Well, anyway.
But then wasn't she talking about like she was looking for the doctor, which I felt like maybe the tree things were telling her to go, or they were whispering to her.
Yeah, but how'd she get in? I thought like you can't just get into the TARDIS.
Didn't he find her in the? Then I think he brings her into the TARDIS. I think he finds her.
Anyway, there's trees all over the place. Maeve doesn't know either.
Trees up the wazoo.
We end up meeting up with one another. Then we lose Maeve again. We find out that Maeve's sister went missing last year.
Yeah,
and and
it was very upsetting.
I like that they're like, so we don't want to lose children generally, but we really don't want to lose this child. We already lost their sister.
Well, once you lose the spare, then you got to be more careful, right? Yeah. It's like if I lost a kidney, I'd be super careful about that last kidney. Same with kids, I think. That's another parenting tip.
Yes.
John's parenting corner.
Very similar. Children also help rid your body of impurities.
Exactly.
Similar. They're very similar.
Exactly. And they have spare kidneys for you. This is a lot.
So what we sort of find out is first of all this growth just happened today. It's actual growth. The doctor's trying to figure out, is it an alien? I don't know what it is. And then he figures out that there's a huge solar flare about to strike the Earth. And he also figures out that Maeve has foretold this.
She's got some link to the tree, the glowy tree bits.
Yeah.
As they call them.
And they find Maeve and they get into this whole thing about like, she's gone through this problem since her sister has gone away and she's on medication and she kind of goes into fits when she's not on it. She's a real troubled kid. And the doctor's like, stop giving everybody medication. Right. Goes into his Tom Cruise bit. Like, we all have to get off our medication. Anyway, because he does believe the solar flare is coming there. Maeve sort of believes that she has manifested this solar flare. By the trees and stuff by thinking about it.
It's useful to make kids believe they're responsible for those kinds of things, right? I see like that's why it's raining because God is sad because you didn't eat your broccoli.
If any kids are listening, that is true. And if your parents got divorced, that's on you. All right, that is your fault, 100%. So he creates a gravity. Speaking of hand wavy science, he says she needs some localized gravity field to separate her from whoever she's seeing, because she's having lots of visions and
she's waving her arms in the air. Yeah.
She's constantly swatting around her head, and so he adds gravity. We're able to see these that look like almost little will-o'-the-wisps. Pixies, and they talk, and they're just sort of like, they're kind of like the spirit of the forest kind of talking to us. Speaking of getting into like mystical things, it felt very mystical.
Yeah, this is a very fantasy episode.
And they say, well, anyway, so the doctor's talking to him, and what they say is like, we've been here forever, we'll be here before. They don't really say too much, but basically what they get to pretty quickly is And so the doctor gets out of everything, right? He solves everything. He saves the world all the time. So it's always unbelievable in these episodes where they get a moment where like, hey, the solar flare is going to come and it will endanger all the Earth. And Clara's like, okay, like, oh, what's the plan? What do we do? The doctor's for this one is like, no, there's no plan. That's it. Like, I can't do anything. It was like,
you're all gonna die.
Wow, every other situation, why in this
Man knows
case
his
is there
limits.
nothing you can do? But at any rate, so that's what they say. And then there's this sort of moment that a bunch of stuff's going on. But basically, what's being said is, look, this is it for the Earth. And Clara says, you can't save everyone, save who you can. Kind of this idea of like, look, you can run around with the chicken and your head cut off and let everything go, or can you at least help some people, then help them?
Well, no, she's like, save
And she
yourself.
said, get people onto the TARDIS. She said the TARDIS is a lifeboat. Get people onto it. Doesn't she say that?
No, she's like, well, I think she starts to think that. And then Danny kind of, who is really good in the story, actually, Danny kind of is like, you can't take these kids away, and then all their parents and friends are gonna die. And then what are you gonna tell them?
Oh, okay. So that's her initial reaction, and then she
Right.
has that interaction with Danny.
And so then she's like, oh, and the doctor was, I think, gonna stay with them too or something. And she's like, no, you're too important. You need to, you can't stay with us. The universe needs you. And I also have died.
And
a
she
million times
chooses
to
to
save
stay
you.
with Danny.
Yeah, she chooses to stay with Danny. So yeah, it is a little bit of, but then we get to that scene we just heard where he comes back. It's like, no, it's actually cool, everybody. I don't have to do
Right.
anything.
So he comes back and says, he just sort of figures out that like, oh, I see, the trees are actually there to help you. So they are, and they have done this throughout history for the Earth, that they are basically, again, like the spiritual part of the Earth and the Earth's like defense system and immune system, and they're going to be there and expunge a bunch of extra oxygen, which will allow the solar flare to kind of pass harmlessly by, although it seems pretty intense there. But what he's saying though, but because it'll happen all in the upper atmosphere, it'll just appear like this amazing light show, but like it won't really affect you much. And that is in fact what happens. And then we have some interactions between Danny and Clara.
He realizes she's been lying to him. Yeah.
Right. We mentioned last episode for, I don't know, this season, for a few episodes, they'd had the conversation where and it wasn't like he was forcing her previously to say like, right? He didn't say like, you can't go with the doctor. She said like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I'm done with
you.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was her though. She didn't like, it feels like Danny gave her some ultimatum.
Yeah, it feels like he was disapproving, but like, hey, you got to deal with this yourself or whatever. And then, it seems like she just kind of decided to lie about it, maybe because she just didn't want to confront the whole conversation.
And then he is being, I would say, pretty great about it. And is just basically like, look, you lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk about this. You need to figure this out. We're not talking about it right now. And then like he's being very, very, it's like, this is the partner you want, like this person who's dealing with it in this way. And so I guess we'll find out what happens with that next episode.
Yes, we will.
And and that's the end of the episode.
Well, and then you get the terrible, I think the terrible hokey end where the trees all disappear instantly. And then they find the missing sister is like behind a bush.
Oh yeah,
it's just like the trees brought her back. I'm like, did they?
Yeah, that's true. Did they? Did the trees bring her back? I mean, I don't know what's going on.
This was a divisive episode. This is by Frank Cottrell Bryce. I mean, I'm saying that name right. Frank Cottrell Bryce. He's a children's writer. He wrote the 2012 Olympic opening ceremonies for the London Olympics. He also wrote the movie Millions, the Danny Boyle movie. I really like that movie. I
remember you recommending that movie to me.
Yeah, I really like that movie.
I've seen it.
So he said some good stuff. But yeah, there's some people who were like, maybe he didn't quite get Doctor Who here. It was again, people thought it was a little sort of weird, sort of fantasy thing.
He also, by the way, I just want to cut in and say he wrote 3 sequels to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I just want to mention that.
There's a lot to mine in that story. You got Clara, obviously, again, another good storyline. She's again more character for her. We're seeing her as a teacher and interacting with the students. So it's kind of nice. I like the bouncing back and forth between Danny and the doctor, and I like the tension of her. Like she can't help but get excited about the doctor adventure. And Danny has to keep being like, there are children here who are scared or who might die.
Yes. And one notable time, like but other times throughout, like Danny saves them, not the doctor. Like
Yeah.
Danny
from the
stops this like
wolves.
tiger from attacking and the wolves.
The wolves. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some interesting. Obviously, there's some Little Red Riding Hood going on here. You've got her in a red coat running through the forest with the wolves, chasing
And the
her.
doctor references that.
Yeah, the doctor catches that.
By the way, also the doctor at the end when he's calling them back in, that was notable to me. It was the first time I heard it. He calls Danny. He says, "Mr. Pink, come back here."
Yeah.
He actually refers to him like in an honorific, like he.
Yeah, not PE. Yeah. I thought that was so clearly turning around on him, and their relationship seems to be solidifying a little bit, which is nice. The biggest problem I have with the story is it is set in the middle of London. Trees suddenly appeared out of nowhere. You've got Trafalgar Square, which is like one of the by the museums. You got the Nelson's Column and all that kind of stuff. Where is everyone?
True.
They are in the middle of the city, which overnight has sprung up a whole bunch of trees, and we see characters like the girl's mother comes riding her bicycle to look for them. So everybody's alive. It's not like they all got sucked into trees, and the government's out there. But where are the millions and millions of people who live in London? Did they all just be like,
That's funny.
A lot of trees out there. I guess we'll just stay home. I grant you some wood, but yeah. So that was like a thing where they sort of stretched it too far. They're probably like we can't have millions of extras wandering around this forest, but at the same time, it doesn't make any sense that they're not there. But yeah, this is a very divisive story when it came out. A lot of people did not like it and felt it was a little silly, a little childish. I think it's kind of I think it's just a fun little fantasy story that's not the most weighty Doctor Who ever, but I didn't think it was too bad.
Well, why don't we move on to our classic episode, The Seeds of Doom. This is season 13, the 6th story of that season. We got the 4th Doctor, we got Sarah Jane, and this aired the 31st of January through the 6th of March, 1976, just before John and I were born.
Just a bit outside.
This is the 85th Doctor Who story ever. It is a 6-parter.
Yeah.
And we have a clip here of the Seeds of Doom.
Come on. Not exactly rushing themselves, are they?
Perhaps we should have gone back into the grounds.
No, too dangerous. Wonder what has happened to Dunbar.
Because there were these armed men running about.
Must have been quite terrifying.
Not a bit. I enjoyed it. I like a little excitement. Besides, I have some wartime experience, you know. Yes. I was a sergeant in the ATS. Manned an ack gun at Folkestone.
Indeed. Yes. This is Sir Colin Thackeray. I am aware that the Brigadier is in Geneva. I must speak to a senior officer. This is a matter of national security. Yes, national security.
Invent a code word. They love that. What about Operation Nuthouse?
What? Major Beresford? All right, get him down here, fast. Thank you.
Bravo.
What a nitwit.
That's the stuff to give them. After all, our taxes pay for these wretched civil servants, and you can never get hold of them when you want them, can you?
I am a civil servant, Miss Ducat.
Then you know exactly what I mean, of course.
The great Amelia Ducat. We'll talk about her later, but great bit character in here.
It's 6 episodes. There's a lot going on here, so I'll just go through the quick basics of the story, and then you can fill in all the extra stuff that has tantalized Doctor Who fans for years. I don't know. We start off in the Antarctic, and some scientists undercover these 2 seeds, which they assume they're in the strata of the ice, so they're these ancient seeds, but they're actually alien seeds
because they're too deep. They're like, wait, they're too deep in the ice, they shouldn't be there.
When also one of the scientists just has this sense of this is alive now. So the Doctor and Sarah Jane spring into action, and we have I think this is the end of the first episode. One of the pods germinates and contaminates, whatever you want to say, takes over.
It infects Mobley. Yep.
One of the scientists, and he goes all green and falls down, and he becomes a crinoid, right?
Crinoid, yes. The crinoid.
Sorry. Mm-hmm. So what we find out is they bring the seed back to study. I believe they bring it back to England to unit. I guess.
Well, so they find one seed. It infects the guy. The Doctor arrives. There's usually 2 seeds, so they go find the second one. And he puts it in the freezer. Then the guys Scorby and Keeler come right from are sent by Chase to
Oh, so he
steal
finds.
the
I'm sorry,
pod.
I thought they already took it back. So yes,
Yeah.
so Chase is our classic. He would be a billionaire now. He's
Yeah.
only a millionaire
Yeah.
in the 60s, and he's a villainous, evil, rich person.
Flamingly homosexual. I mean, it's not usually obvious in Doctor Who, but in this one, I'd be the camp would be the way that the British would describe it. But he is very camp. Yeah,
And his weird obsession is with plants. He's
super loves
and
plants.
he talks about how like, oh, we want to preserve all the animals, but what about the plants?
He does. He's just, and what are you doing about bonsai? He's like bonsai is like the horrible mutilation and torture of innocent plants. It's great. It's a great moment.
Okay, so and basically what happens is like he gets the pod. He sort of we do find out this it's an alien race that what they do is they come over and sort of take over worlds and destroy everything, right? I mean,
right.
they
They
feast
germinate
on the
and
living creatures on a world.
they eat the animals, and then they can also take over the other vegetation. Right. They can can somehow.
And then they
I was
germinate and
mentally,
send
but-
off their seeds
Right,
out
then they're
to
more,
another
yep.
planet. I mean, this is
Yep,
like
it's
it's just
the
sort of
circle
that's
of
their
life. Yeah.
that's their life cycle.
Look, people, just get used to it, folks.
So the Doctor knows what this is. So this continues to happen. This guy is like wanting to study it and look into it and celebrate it and thinks it's great that and then the plants are starting to spread around, and we see very similar scenes like you found in the pairing here where plants are spreading all over everything. The henchmen who come, as you mentioned earlier, we have some back and forth with. They are holding the Doctor and Sarah Jane hostage. Then later they kind of have to team up with them. So there's a whole back and forth with them.
Yeah, there's nice tension there. That's John Chalice as Scorby, and he's very good. And the dynamic.
Scorby's
Sarah,
the mustache guy, right?
Yeah. And Sarah holds her own with him, and the back and forth when it's just they're paired up is great.
So then the pod starts infecting the Chronoids and starts growing into this like sort of becomes more of there's a monster movie aspect to it. We get this enormous Chronoid. Unit checks in. I want to hear more about Unit because is this pre or post Brigadier Unit? What's the deal with that?
It's current Brigadier Unit, but the Brigadier's in Geneva because Nicholas Courtney was busy. Couldn't have film. So yeah. So we have Colonel Osgood. Major Beresford. Excuse me, Major Beresford, making his one and checking in for his one and only appearance in Doctor Who.
So yeah, he has some funny lines at the end too. He's talking about like rhubarb, like
aggressive rhubarb,
which I think is a great name for a band. So the Chronoid starts to grow bigger. Chase is just like feeding it to more and more. He's like great. Has this weird scene where he's in there
communing with the plants.
Sort of doing like he's praying. He's in there in like a crisscross applesauce praying to the plants,
which is great. That's one of my favorite scenes because I remember being terrified of it as a kid because it's when the plants come alive, right? They're in the greenhouse and the plants come out. Sarah and Scorby and the butler and they're trying to strangle them. And it is one of the great it's one of my favorite effects, really. They're like, all right, the plants come alive, and it's clearly just stagehands shaking plants at them.
But you were scared.
It worked. I was a very scary episode.
So then, Unit finally realizes, like, plants. We could burn plants. It takes a long time to get there. And also they come in with some spray, but primarily Unit gets very excited about getting to drop a bunch of bombs, and they do. And really, that's it. They eventually just bomb the hell out of the plants.
Yep, just blow it up.
That's the key. Like, there's not a lot of like Doctor solving things here. It's just that's that. And then obviously Sarah Jane does get out of that. I believe Scorby is strangled by the plants, right?
Yeah, he tries to escape at the end, right? They're like, "Hey, we gotta wait, and we'll get out." And or he's like, "No, I'm gonna go on my own." And then he gets drowned. He's like pulled under the swamp by a big leaf thing.
So there you go. They fend off the Chronoid infestation, and Chase is killed by his he gets into the grinder, right?
Yeah, they have the several scenes of the Doctor trapped in the grinder, and then he escapes, and then of course you gotta have your villain gets their just desserts, so he's ground up into compost and pumped into the garden.
Yeah, I just thought. Again, as I always say with these 6-episode ones, there are very few that I feel like garner this. There's fun stuff going on, and it's like you said, it's a sort of silly monster that's fun to watch, but it just sort of wore on me by the end. I think there was a lot of fun to be had, but I felt like it could have been condensed. But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff along the way.
This is one of my favorites. This is a monster movie classic, certainly.
Yeah.
And actually, they're paying tribute to a lot of this. This is by Robert Banks Stewart, who's written. He wrote Terror of the Zygons. He's written a few of this era. He wrote a lot for shows like The Avengers and sort of other great 70s TV shows. Likes to do these sort of this is a very Avengers-y plot, right? And in fact, there's an Avengers story called The Man-Eater of Surrey Green, I believe, which is almost exactly this plot, just without the Doctor from back in the day. But it actually was written as a 4-parter. And I think they had a story fall through or something happened, and they basically needed 2 more episodes to finish out the season. So I think Robert Holmes wrote the Antarctica part, right? So I think the story just was going to start with just in England, and they find a pod and it takes over the house and that kind of thing. And they're like, well, we need 2 more episodes. So they wrote the prologue, basically a prologue where they find the pod in Antarctica. And that you can see that's just like 2 self-contained episodes, right? The thing blows up at the end. All the characters from that are dead.
Yeah.
And they move on to the next thing. But it's got a nice thing for another world vibe, the Antarctic base and the thing hunting them and stuff like that.
I actually really like that part of it. I thought
Yeah,
that
it was good, right? You've got so Harrison Chase is played by Tony Beckley, who was sort of a well-known 70s character actor. He's most famous for was a very famous movie called When a Stranger Calls, which is and he was the villain in it. He's a serial killer in it, and this is the famous movie with the beginning. It's Carol Kane is actually, I believe, in it. The beginning is a babysitter alone, and she keeps getting phone calls, the prank phone calls from someone, and he's sort of harassing her on the phone, and she calls the police, and they say, try to keep him on the phone. We'll see if we can trace the call. She does.
And then they say the call is coming in from inside the house.
Yeah, he was the villain in that. Yes, he's great. I think plays this great sort of crazy character, and I think he becomes more and more deranged through the thing. You've got John Challis as Scorby. This is directed by Dougie Camfield, who directed Planet of Giants way back, or pieces of Planet of Giants way back. That's where he got to start on Doctor Who. I think this may be the last story he directed, but he did a lot of the military ones. You've got Tom Baker playing a very aloof and alien, right? He's very is out of character in some ways. Like he
did a lot of yelling.
He's got he punches out the chauffeur in the sort of episode 3 where they're trying to figure out where the pods have gone, and the chauffeur tries to kill them, and he jumps him, and carries a gun at one point. Like it's very out of character, almost like this was an Avengers episode instead of Doctor Who. Sarah's great as always. Of course, she's always very reliable. I go with it. I call out Mark Jones plays Keeler. He's really good in it. He's the guy who gets infected the second time and he's sort of tied to the bed. I points to the butler. I love the butler because he's just so nonplussed about all of it. Like it's like guys infected with a thing. He's just people getting shot, people jumping through windows. The butler is just like, okay. At one point, I think it's the way he delivers the line. At one point, Keeler's infected by the plant and he's turning green. He's green and shivering and all that kind of stuff. And then the butler comes in and Chase is like, Mr. Keeler's unwell, and the butler just looks like, Mr. Keeler, like carries him out to the thing. And then calling out from the clip, Sylvia Coleridge as Amelia Dukas, the art expert or whatever, who has no purpose in the story other than is incredibly entertaining. How she gets into the story is they're trying to figure out where the pod is. Chase sends his chauffeur to kidnap the Doctor, who uses his own car, I guess, which may be mistake number 1. They jump the chauffeur and knock him out, and they're trying to figure out, all right, who sent this guy, and they find the painting in the boot of the car of a flower. And then Sarah has the great line where she's like, she looks at it and she's like, oh, Amelia Dukas, and the Doctor's like, who's that? And she's like, only the world's #1 flower artist. like everyone that. So then they go to Amelia Dukas and they ask her who found the painting, or who commissioned the painting, and that's how they get to Chase. And then she comes back later as they send her in to get because she's like, oh, he never paid me, and then they go in. Anyway, she's a fantastic character, and we'll talk about this some more in the themes. But again, when they novelize the story later, she was completely written out. They just did not even have her. It's just totally unnecessary, and yet she's fantastic. So yeah, this is it's definitely long. but it's one I've seen a lot. I think I had a tape of it early on, and so watched and rewatched it a lot. But it's definitely sort of very classic Tom Baker.
I wanted to mention that When a Stranger Calls, and I've never heard of this. I know that trope you're mentioning, and I never
Yep.
heard of this movie. As Madeline Kahn in that movie, she's the babysitter, a young Madeline Kahn. Now they remade it in 2006, which is always a good idea.
Yeah, always good.
It got 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. So please watch the 1979 version of that.
I read a review because I was looking this up, and it's something like they said it's like the first 20 minutes of the 1970 whatever version are terrifying, and then it sort of falls apart. But they said that the first 20 minutes where they're like calling her, harassing in the house is great.
It's not unlike this podcast.
Yeah.
In the forest of the night, I go walking in my dreams. John talks about Doctor Who, and then we talk about themes and the seeds of the doom. I go walking in the forest of I go walking in the forest.
Oh yeah.
Again, another timely
both
song.
titles in. Way to work both titles in there. That was good.
Everyone remembers Billy Joel's In the Middle of the Night. Checking in at number 92 on our playlist this week.
In the Forest of the Night is that's Tiger Burning Right in the Forest of the Night. Who's that? Tennyson? Somebody wrote that's a famous poem, right? That's
is that
Tiger.
From that one? I know that poem you're talking about.
Yeah, Tiger Burning Bright in the Forest of the Night.
Oh yeah. Well, I was referencing Billy Joel River of Dreams, which came out in let me see. Again, topical in 1993. I think we all remember that.
We all remember right around We Didn't Start the Fire. That came out around that time.
Just after that, yeah. And then he began performing in Madison Square Garden and has not stopped since.
Still there.
24 hours a day, he is in Madison Square Garden doing concerts.
In the middle of a Knicks game, it's just piano just right at the foul line, and they're like playing around him. Yeah.
And everyone's like sort of too polite. He's like, he's a New York institution. So everyone's like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. No one's really going to the show anymore. People just mill and are walking in and out of Madison Square Garden. Just keeps going. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about themes, which are ideas and topics that are threaded throughout Doctor Who and all of time and space. John, what did you want to discuss for these couple episodes?
Well, so I want to come back to the character I was raving about in the last segment, the great Amelia Dukas. And I want to talk about the British eccentric, this character type, because Doctor Who, arguably the Doctor is the ultimate British eccentric.
Yeah.
But Doctor Who is littered with him. You've got Amelia Dukas, you've got Professor Rumford, remember from the Stones of Blood, that was on your companion list. And it's this.
We haven't updated that list in a while.
It's been a while, yeah. And that possibly gay kid could be around. You never know. You've got Harrison Chase. I guess is a bit of the British eccentric, right? Weirdo lives in a mansion and things like that. And I'm trying to think of a few other examples, but I think what is interesting to me is this archetype, which as I was thinking about it, and I was even Googling around, and I came across an essay by Christopher Hitchens talking about this. This is possibly one of the most essentially British characters. This British eccentric is a character. And you don't really see that in any other culture. Like, it's always the British eccentric. I mean, there are eccentric characters, but like this person, this type of person who's just a sort of quirky, batty, like person is always is just a core part of Britain or British literature. I mean, think about Dickens is loaded with them, right? Every character is this sort of oddball. Miss Havisham in Great Expectations, and the aunt in David Copperfield, who's I forget her name, but it's hilarious, and lives in the house, and the donkeys keep coming to the yard. She keeps running out to chase the donkeys. It's a very funny scene in the book. I love Charles Dickens. He's good. People, if you've never read this Dickens guy, check out.
This is a recommendation.
Tell him Mind Probe sent you. But I will contend here on this podcast. I will contend that this is a uniquely British character type. What do you think about that?
It's interesting because I'm trying to think what would lead to this being British, and I feel like there's two things that these eccentrics. One is they're not always, but often they're from money, and so they're allowed to descend into this eccentricity because they have no real need to come out of it for any
Sure.
reason, because they're usually from old money, and there's a lot of old money in Britain. I mean, so that's a part of it. I think the other part of it, because you think like, well, there's plenty of weirdos in all sorts of other countries, but I wonder if it's because in general the British are so buttoned up that, or like that's a stereotype also of Britain,
Mhm,
right? That
mhm.
is very like, oh, I can't do, and, and so then to have also the one who's been held too tight so that they just came out the other end and they're just bizarre, maybe that makes it work, because like you're right, it does seem like that's a common character. I mean, I don't know, I don't probably watch enough movies about people from a bunch of other cultures, but yeah, you certainly do see that character a lot, of the like loony British person. But I wonder if that's what it is, if that
Might
stereotype
be
of,
class, yeah, and
well,
yeah,
class, and again that
buttoned
Brits
up,
are, yes,
yeah,
are held so tightly by their culture that like a few slip out, like,
yeah.
and then it's noticeable.
Yeah. Hitchens, I think in his article, he talks about like, he's like, well, look at the entire country's eccentric. He's like, look at, we have a royal family and he sort of delineates some of the oddities of the royals and the, that history and things like that. And he sort of, spells out this quirkiness. And I guess there's what's what I'm looking for,
Well, but so
a
maybe part
toleration,
of it,
acceptability of it. Yeah.
yeah, maybe part of it too is not, maybe now, but definitely for, I don't know, however many 100 years, the Brits were sort of running things and in charge of things. And so, that's often the thing where someone's allowed to get away with their peculiarities when they're in charge. Like, I can't really say much about it. So you have some of that was sort of let go and not tamped down, or not just like waved off as weird. It was like, I guess we have to deal with this weirdness from these
Yeah.
Brits because they're kind of in charge.
Yeah. Like there's sort of a power dynamic there, and then once you let it flourish, then it just develops into this thing. And whereas you think about other countries that maybe we push for more it's interesting. They're both it's a culture to be both buttoned up, but then I like how you're saying it's sort of pushed out the other side, because like other countries would be like, no, you just conform. Don't be, if you're an eccentric, then we don't want to see you, or don't be, don't be around.
Right.
Whereas there, it's like, if you're an eccentric, you might be the foreign minister. There is sort of there's more visibility, and there's less like we're going to force you to conform in this dynamic, and maybe some celebration of we like
Like a lot of us
the
aren't going to
weirdness.
be weird, so we're going to let the weird ones really go for it, so we can all, as a culture, be okay with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it creates. I think it creates these great stories. Like, and again, you have these moments of. I mean, we love Professor Rumford in Stones of Blood, and I love Amelia Ducat in this, and sort of these other. It's especially older women. It's definitely. I mean, it's a good split actually. But yeah, maybe that's maybe the link I'm looking for, is the Dickensian side of it. Like, Dickens is just full of eccentrics. Like, they're all, they've all got these sort of weird little quirks, and seems to celebrate that. And you wonder almost which came first, in a sense of like, is it, is there sort of like Dickens defined culture so much,
Right.
that then that created that acceptability. You're like, oh yeah, this is, I mean, what the
Sherlock Holmes
Dickensian.
himself is an eccentric.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, right. Like, it created this sort of thing of like, oh, we celebrate in our literature, and this does define our culture. And then sort of it became more and more. So I guess it's just my way of saying I'm thinking about becoming an eccentric. So
Okay.
I don't.
What's going to be your affectation? You got to have an affectation, I think. What are you going to pick?
Well, Mike won't let me get a cane.
Cane.
I really want a cane, and I've always wanted a monocle, but I don't. It feels like it would get tired in your eye. I don't know if you like squint the whole time. But anyway, and then obviously I would be obsessive about a particular television. That would be a really interesting line for me.
All right, we have moved on to the ranking portion of the show.
We just insulted all of Britain. I think we knocked out the Welsh and the Irish at the beginning.
Welsh, Irish,
now we've
yep.
just pretty much leveled all of Britain's buttoned up weirdos.
We haven't really hit the Scots, but we can talk about Peter Capaldi some more, and kind of in doing so.
Yeah,
Oh no, we did, because didn't you? Did you say, was it this episode where you were talking about how you couldn't even understand what Peter
The
Capaldi
last
was
one in
saying?
Flatline. Yeah, I couldn't understand
Oh,
when
that
he
was
said the
in the last
boneless.
episode.
Yes, yeah. Go back, folks. Listen to that last episode.
Well,
Listen when
anyway,
he mock Scotland.
we're working on ranking
Yeah,
all
we're doing it.
300
We're
of
doing it.
the first 300 Doctor Who television stories. We've ranked 190 of them, so we're not like fooling around. Like we
Yeah,
really have
no
been
joke,
doing it.
folks. No joke, folks.
So we're gonna move on to ranking these. I will go first.
Please.
So yeah, this was the first Peter Capaldi bigger miss for me. I didn't like dislike it all that. It certainly wasn't in the bottom of the barrel or anything like that. Like, for example, I remember when we first saw Fear Her and Love and Monsters, it was like, oh wow, you can have a NuWho that's like really I don't enjoy. I didn't feel like this was at that level. And maybe some do, but like I didn't enjoy it, but it didn't make me upset or anything like that.
No
It was a
rage.
lot of kid actors, but I actually thought they were fine. Like they were, they were on this field trip with the kids. Everything the kids were doing to me like worked okay, and Maeve was fine. The moment at the end finding her sister, yeah, a little on the nose. But anyway, I have it 125 out of 190. I have it right around the time of the Doctor, just above the Sea Devils, Day of the Daleks, Full Circle. So definitely lowest Peter Capaldi so far, but not in the very basement. Seeds of Doom, I don't know. I go back and forth on it. I'm sure everyone loves this. I didn't love it that much, but a lot of it was just because it was taken a long time. But I don't have it near the bottom by any means. I have it in in the upper half of things. I have it number 77. I have it just above the Five Doctors special, The Bells of St. John, above Modern Undead. I have it below Angels Take Manhattan, Waters of Mars. Yeah, so like it's not in my top. It's not in my top, but I can imagine a young John Grant watching this over and over and really loving
Over
it.
and over and over.
And it does have a kitschy funness to it, but it ran a little long, and the people, seeing the stagehands move the plants became a little tiresome. But
Back and forth.
yeah, good stuff.
What number did you have in the forest? That
in the Forest of the Night, I had it 125.
okay, all right. Yeah, we're not too far apart here. At least on this one. In the Forest of the Night, yeah. I actually sort of dragged my feet to rewatch it because I was like, I don't remember this not being that great. I remember not really liking it when it first came on. I found myself enjoying it more than I thought I would.
I mean, it definitely has holes in it, right?
It's definitely, and again, it really that the fact that there's no one in London just bothers me for some reason. Takes me out of it a little bit. I like Peter Capaldi in it. I like the Clara Danny dynamic. And again, I really been thinking about it since Kill the Moon, where she did that weird left turn with her character and yelled at him at the end. I was sort of like, what? Since then, I really liked Clara, Mummy on the Orient Express, Flatline. Now this one, like, I feel like there's something interesting happening with her character, even if it is this old trope of lying to your boyfriend about traveling in time and space, like we all have done.
We all do it.
But I like it, and I think the dynamic's kind of interesting. But nonetheless, yeah, not my favorite story. I've got it at I had it at number 114.
Okay.
So down there, pretty low on my Peter Capaldi era thing. I've got this around dinosaurs.
Don't worry, he's still by far your most favorite Doctor,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Below dinosaurs on a spaceship, higher than Utopia, which is kind of interesting, but above Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. Yeah, I mean, again, not my favorite, not terrible, but not as bad again as I sort of expect. Seeds of Doom is another nostalgia one for me. Like I said, I think it was one of the first ones that I got on VHS, not bought. I recorded it off TV, so I watched it over and over and over again as a sort of the movie version. It's Tom Baker and Sarah. Obviously, that's always a plus. But I think it's a fun monster movie, basically, and has good performances, strong performances from everyone. They don't, aside from a few ridiculous shots of the Crinoid, which eventually just becomes a guy with tentacles in a bag over them.
Yeah.
They don't push too hard on the thing. You got a great villain in Harrison Chase. So I've got it at number 23, above the Three Doctors. Around Terror of the Zygons, which makes sense. It's very similar to Terror of the Zygons. Below Robot, below Mummy on the Orient Express.
You guys have it, just so you know, it's 21. You're I know what you're reading, but it's 21, not 23.
21.
You gotta
Alright,
subtract
one.
one.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Math is hard. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's in there. It's in there, like Rego. Yeah, I gotta and Round Robot is another. It's a good robot one. It's like that. It's like that very classic down home, just good earth hearty.
By the
Doctor
way,
Who.
what I'm referring to, take you behind the scenes here, is the No Not the Mind Probe episodes and rankings spreadsheet, which one
Yeah.
day I imagine will be inducted into like the Smithsonian. I
I would
imagine
think.
they'll probably something like that, and the people will finally get to see, behind the scenes of like, this is how the sausage is made here.
And
About how
then
we do.
some high school statistics student is going to be like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't think this is right at all. I think the formula that you used is totally wrong.
It once worked. Speaking of which,
Yeah, let's plug it into the old calculator.
plug
there.
it into the supercomputer. What we end up with is a bit of a shift, right? We normally
Hmm.
probably due mainly to me end up, but also probably due to mainly the newer series is often a little bit more coherent. We usually have the newer series ranked higher than our, not always, but often, but yeah, pretty different this time around. In the Forest of the Night, I ranked 125. You ranked 113. Because we both ranked it so low, it's actually even lower than that. Two behind, it's ranked 130, right around the Gunfighters, Unearthly Child. I'm surprised Unearthly Child is that low. It's not bad.
Yeah, it keeps
But
falling.
but it is not in the basement again,
No.
but it is on the bottom end of things.
It's not in
And
Dungeons and
then
Varus land.
alternately, Seeds of Doom, because of your 21, I ranked it 77. Because of your 21,
Higher.
it's 38.
Yeah.
It's 38.
Yeah, I win.
It is right near actually Flatline when we ranked it last episode.
There
It's
we
not.
go.
It's not far from there.
Yeah,
Five
okay.
Doctors,
See
Doctor's
that.
Wife, Shakespeare Code, and Dalek Invasion of Earth. I pushed higher.
Yeah, good.
And Father's Day,
You
but
did. You
yeah.
love Dial Vision. All right, let's check in on the Doctor Who magazine poll here. Great poll. In the Forest of the Night, like a bullet, dead last in the Capaldi era.
This was the fear her
35
of
of
the
35.
Capaldi era,
Yeah,
huh?
number 35 of 35. Again, I'm thinking a little bit harsh. There's a couple on there that we haven't watched yet that I'm like,
Then I think that he's weathering this pretty well. Like, we're ranking him still pretty high. Like,
yeah. Again, I think it's divisive. I think people, Doctor Who fans in particular, get very defensive if they feel like something's too childish, right? And they know, no, Doctor Who's very serious, real science fiction. And like, really, the Goblin King just about ate a baby, and they're like, to a musical number, and they're like, no, very serious science fiction. So yeah, according to Doctor Who magazine poll, anyway, the worst of the Peter Capaldi era, and then Seeds of Doom, according to the Doctor Who magazine poll, coming in at number 6 of 41. So in the top 10.
Wow.
Of the
What
Tom
are the
Baker
5 higher Tom Baker stories?
So going from Seeds of Doom up, you got the Talons of Weng Chiang, the Robots of Death, Pyramids of Mars, Genesis of the Daleks, and City of Death. So yeah, it's definitely in the strong. And then Seeds of Doom is right above Terror of the Zygons, Horror Frank Rock, which I don't think we've seen yet, and the Ark in Space, and the Deadly Assassin. So yeah, it's hovered around 6 or 7 actually since the beginning. But yeah, it's always been a pretty popular one. And that's what the rest of the Who fans think.
Well, if you can't. By the way, I always say this right after John says this. You can't see those rankings on MindProbe.show.
You got to buy Doctor Who magazine.
All the and we recommend you do.
Yeah,
but
not cheap, but it's worth it.
All the other rankings you can see on MindProbe.show on our website. We have our rankings. We have the watch order if you want to watch along with us. You can see how to subscribe to the show. We also we post a video of us recording that show on YouTube. It's us right now.
Hi.
And we have those embedded there. You can also
I'm
go
the
to
white
YouTube
one. I'm the white guy.
That's right. The whiter. Yeah. You can search for us on YouTube. You can also subscribe to us there. We'd appreciate a like, a thumbs up, a subscribe on YouTube.
Do.
And also, we'd love it if you reviewed and subscribed and rated us highly on iTunes and Spotify.
We believe with your support, we can get to 20 people who have seen this.
We referenced an email earlier in the show from Superfan Paul. If anyone else wants to write in, you can write in at porter@mindprobe.show. John will have to work. If you start
try to figure it out.
Here's what I want. If you guys could start writing into John at mindprobe.show, he's going to be forced to find his password and log in.
Maybe it's mail.mindprobe.show.
It might be. That might be it.
I'm going to try that.
But John, what do we have in store for next week? We're closing out a season.
Season finale time, folks. Yeah. We haven't really mentioned it but she has popped up. We've seen that mysterious woman
Oh
who's popped
yeah,
up a
the
couple
weird
times.
lady.
Yeah, and she at the end of this one, she was like in a spaceship or something. Watching anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna find out who she is
Hmm.
in the big season finale of Peter Capaldi's first season. That would be
Dark
Dark Water
Water.
and Death in Heaven.
So we're watching those as a
As a
whole.
two-parter. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a big double episode. And in fact, the next time we record one of these, we may just be doing a single one because so you got a two-parter of the new Who, and I've paired that, and I'm not going to tell you the connection really because it would give away a twist, I think, but because of one scene in particular that is recreated in the Dark Water, Death in Heaven from this classic Who story. It's an homage to scene. That's all I'm going to say. But this is the second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe in the Invasion, which sees the second appearance of the Brigadier. I think so. The first time we see Unit as a thing, and we've seen the Web of Fear, but now we're going to see the second appearance of the Brigadier, and it's an 8-parter. Every second essential, I can assure you. But it is
Are these missing episodes? Or we...
two. Again, use your contacts. 6 episodes exist as is, and there are 2 that have been animated. So you are able to sit and watch the entire 8 episode epic. But that is the Invasion.
All right. So that's a big one. You get 2 weeks. You got to do your homework on this
people,
one.
Just space it out, people. Pace yourselves. Don't try to do too much at once.
Get up, take breaths. Make sure you stretch.
Yeah, there's a lot of deep vein thrombosis from the Invasion.
You gotta watch out because that's the key thing to Doctor Who is make sure there's movement. Nutrition is important to watching Doctor Who.
Very important. You don't want to conk out. You don't want to be like 9 episodes into the War Games and then suddenly you can't make it.
Gosh. Oh man, this is gonna be a tough one.
It's a tough one. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we just do a single recording because it's basically 2 full watch fests paired up.
Godspeed to me.
Yeah.
All right. Mind Probe.show. Cheers.